The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
So welcome to the Instructor Podcast. As always, I am your wonderful host, Terry Cook, and I am joined by the Northern sensation that is Bob Morton. How are we doing, Bob?
Northern sensation.
I've been thinking of that one all day, the Northern sensation. We've got a very special episode for you today because it is the 3-year anniversary of the Instructor Podcast. And I thought, better to get on than Bob. And a little while ago, Bob, you sent me a message which said that you kind of like to do an episode based around the coaching, the misconceptions around it, the misunderstanding around it, and that type of thing. And I thought to myself, that sounds like a brilliant anniversary episode. And anyone that gets that reference after this weekend, bonus points to you. But we're going to dive into that. But first of all, I do want to take a moment just to kind of give you a little thanks, Bob, actually, because you were the first guest on the Instructor Podcast, which is why I always get you back on the yearly anniversary episodes.
Like a bad penny, keep turning up.
Like a bad penny. I never ask you back. You just turn up. It's supposed to be Chris today, and you come on instead. No, you were someone that gave me a bit of a confidence boost at the start. And I wasn't going to mention this, but I'm going to mention this because I've had people that have been reluctant to come on this show, especially earlier on, not in a rude way, but it wasn't big when I first started recording this podcast. It was obviously, that first episode got 20 downloads in the first week, 20 people.
Was it clever though?
At times it had been clever. I think we spoke about Alan Shearer too much. But you were happy to come on immediately and lend your presence. And I was really grateful for that on that first episode, because as I said, there were people that haven't been keen at first. Now, admittedly, some of those people are very keen. Now it's bigger, but you were someone that were from day one. Yes, I'll lend a hand. So I did want to take a moment to thank you.
Well, you are most welcome. And every time I come on, it's been fun, and it's been a delight to watch the podcast grow into what it is now. And I know for sure you're not finished growing yet. So it's been lovely to see. That I think it cuts across to some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about here. There can't really afford to be any ego attached to this. If you want to be a great trainer, you can't have an ego. Well, you have, I suppose, got to have one, but you've got to keep it under wraps. And it doesn't do any harm to just, appear on things like that. And just, it's like, when Josh first started, I messaged him and said, if you want me to come on, I will. He was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Well, why can't you believe it? I'm just a bloke, same as you, Put me pants on one leg at a time, so to say.
Pants on one leg at a time. There we go. But yes, I will just mention for anyone listening that this is being streamed live into the Instructor Podcast Facebook group. We have got some lovely people watching along saying hello as well, which is always nice. But let's kick on, Bob, because we did come here to talk about coaching, not to bang on about how awesome the Instructor Podcast is. Although I'm happy to do that for a bit. If anyone say anything nice about the podcast in the comments, you're more than welcome. But yeah. Misconceptions, misunderstandings around coaching, Bob, especially as it relates to the driving instructor world.
I think we can go right back to when it was sort of first being introduced by the DVSA, or they were still the DSA then. The Hermes report had been done, the high impact approach for enhancing road safety through more effective communication skills. And, the findings of that report were that instruction teaches people to drive a certain way, and then the change to the way they want to drive after they pass the test. Hence the phrase that you hear all the time, and all driving instructors say, oh, no, that's not the case. You learn to drive, you pass your test, then you learn to drive. Well, I'm afraid that is what happens. I was taught to drive properly, and then drove like a twat as soon as I was let loose, because I was 17 and an idiot. So, and there was no power on this earth would stop me doing it. Unless I maybe thought I was going to get caught. If I saw a copper, I'd slow down. Outside of that, no, car full of me mates, hammer it. Here we go. And I thought it was big, and I thought it was clever. And by some miracle, I survived those early years. I got to 25, by which time I was married, and I'd stopped driving like an idiot. But that's only through experience. That's only because once you get beyond your teen years, you start to develop, the part of your brain that looks at risk and goes, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that." Where when you're 17 to 22, you think you're indestructible. So the idea was from this Hermes project that the answer was coaching. That rather than instruct people what to do, we would use coaching and we would help them experience things, reflect upon it, and then come to their own conclusions about what the right way forward was. So we're making better decision makers. The job of the coach, of course, in what is clearly a safety critical environment, was to help them put together goals that were not so risky. So the DSA looked at it and said, right, we need to do this. So they got about 200 ADIs, I think, to start with, around the Nottingham area, threw a little bit of training at them. I can't speak to the quality of that training, but I suspect it was like, they were new to it, so they were wide of the mark. And unsurprisingly, they had a lot of instructors who were just thinking, well, okay, what do you want to do today? I want to do fast-moving roundabouts. Yeah, but it's only lesson 2. They're thinking, well, it's coaching, so I've got to let them do what they want to do. And then they'll learn from it. My job's to keep them safe by dancing on the dual controls like Fred Astaire and making sure nobody dies. That's not coaching. That's just a free-form, let's have a throw at this and see what happens. Coaching has to be structured experiences. If you're working in a safety-critical environment where we say, well, you can't do that. It's lesson number 2, you can't do motorways. And here's why. So motorways is the long-term goal. Let's break that journey into some smaller goals. And which one of those do you want to do today? In the free-form coaching world out there where it's not safety critical, well, people can just make decisions to do whatever the hell they want. And the coach doesn't have the background knowledge and information. What we need to do as best we can, more of this later, is to not use the information we've got and try and help the learner learn about the situation they're going into. So the DVSA didn't make it, I don't think, that made a very good job of it at the start. They didn't give people enough training. They threw a load of stuff at this and got some bad results. So decided that, well, maybe it wasn't such a good idea after all, I think. And I think the thing that really put them off was that in the final video from the Hermes project, there's a bit where the coach says to the student, "Oh, well, I need to get back to the office. We haven't got much time. I better drive." "No, you drive, but come on, crack on." And of course, the learner goes to go through a stop sign. The coach has to stop them and then have a lovely conversation about what it's about. Well, the DVSA's stated aim is to keep everything safe. So you can't knowingly and willfully throw people into risky situations where if it went wrong, something bad could happen. So that's where the term client-centered seemed to enter the fray. And that was where we've got to make sure that we don't let them do anything safe. Well, that then gives everybody an excuse to start instructing. And once they start instructing, they won't stop. So it's a tricky one. And I was charged at LDC because if I'm totally honest, the MD at LDC introduced me to this coaching malarkey. And I looked at it and I thought, well, load of crap. How the hell? How's somebody supposed to learn what to do if I haven't taught them? That's bloody ridiculous. My job is teaching people how to do stuff. But anyway, as with any of these things, I'm always game to try stuff. So I thought, well, we'll give it a go and see what happens. And our remit at the start was to just not give any instruction. And I was amazed at how much the learner was learning. You think, how's that happening then? And I'm not giving them that information. It's because human beings are dead smart. So somewhere between then and now, we've kind of lost our way as an industry. There are 1 or 2 practitioners out there who do know what it's about and who are, working well with it. But we have to be careful, because if we start the job with the goals for driver education, which is what came from the Hermes project, and we make that our agenda, that's not really coaching, because that's our idea and not the learners. Now, it's important that we bring that sort of stuff in, that we have the conversations with them about, managing risk. Okay, we've managed that lovely there now. How would that be in the dark? How would that be if the weather was bad? How would that be if you had a car full of your mates acting the goat? How would it be if you were in a hurry? How would it be if you weren't feeling very well? So we help them go through these scenarios. And you don't necessarily even have to enter the training arena to do that. You can have them visualize it, work out what they would do, and lo and behold, that becomes part of who they are. Same as their religious beliefs and their political beliefs, so they don't forget. But we must never lose sight of the fact that only the learner can do the learning, and the learning should always be done inside the head of the learner. And we need to not interfere with that, except perhaps posing the odd question. Well, how would that be? How do you think you might do that? What skills have you got so far that help you with that? That then might help us say, well, we haven't got enough skills to do the motorway, but we do have enough skills to do slightly faster moving roads. So let's start with those. Does that make sense to you? Because I can't allow you to do that because I'm the arbiter of safety here. And on day one, 100% of the safety lies with me. And on test day and beyond, 100% of it lies with you. Our journey is to transfer that responsibility. That was a very long answer, wasn't it?
Well, I will never, ever get tired of talking to you. You are easily in my top 100 people that I've interviewed. But the
How many have you interviewed? 90.
94. But yeah, the only problem is you do genuinely speak a lot of wisdom, and I'm not blowing smoke here. You do genuinely speak a lot of good stuff. And now it's like, right, what do I go back to? There's like 17 points now that I want to go back to. No, it's good. I love it. Genuinely. You know that you're one of the people I could listen to all day, but I don't want to blow too much smoke. So I do want to touch back on a couple of things. I want to make one point. You spoke sort of at the beginning there about when you learned to drive and you got let loose as a 17-year-old and how, potentially coaching could have helped you differently. I was the polar opposite, and coaching would have helped me. I was a terrified driver. I hated learning to drive, and when I passed, I hated driving. And I remember my first instructor, the guy that put me in for a test when I'd not learned anything, and I went to pieces. I was horrendous. And he used to bang on about teaching safe driving for life. There was no safe driving for life there. It wasn't even teaching me to pass a test. It was just having a chat and picking his son up from McDonald's. That's what we were doing. So I could go through McDonald's drive-through. But the thing that sticks out for me was I was terrified after my test. And I can remember picking up my first car, Ford Fiesta, and my dad drove me to the garage in Middle Leeds City Centre, and guy gives us keys, and then off he trots, and I'm like, looking at my dad, and my dad goes, do you need me to get out for you? I'm like, yeah, because I don't know how. I didn't, how do I get out of this? And then following my dad home through Leeds City Centre with absolutely no idea of where I was going, how to handle it, the changing lanes, all this kind of stuff. And I just think,
slip roads coming in from the right.
Exactly. And I just think, imagine if someone had taken the time to point me in the right direction or ask me some questions about where I might be going or where I might get my first car from, or what about these situations, and is that the kind of thing you're talking about as well? Because it's not just reining in those 17-year-olds, it's helping the ones like I was that was scared.
Yeah, when I was first an instructor, I always wanted to add these things in. I wanted to teach them how to change the wheel, how to blow the tires up, how to top the water and oil up. But of course, because it was extracurricular stuff and they didn't need it, they didn't want it. And I would often say to the learners, I'm in between this lesson and my next one. I'm due to fuel up. If you like, we can fuel up on the way home. We'll get back a little bit later, 5 minutes later or so, but I'll show you how to fuel up. And a lot of them didn't want it. Well, when I think back, I was racking my brains thinking, why was I so happy without the requisite skills? I mean, I know I was 17 and stupid, but why was I happy to charge around at breakneck speed and not even feel that there was any risk at all? I wasn't even getting the rush from the speed. And I'll tell you why it was. It was because it seemed really quite safe compared to when I bought my first motorbike. And I went up to Ken's Motorcycles on Westgate Road. The guy I paid him the money. He wheeled it out of the showroom, stuck a crash helmet on my head, explained where the clutch, the throttle, the gears and the brakes were, and somehow I made my way home. So compared to that, driving the car was not risky at all. So it didn't scare me because I'd scared the living crap out of myself on the motorbike. I'd fallen off it multiple times. I fell off it during my bloody test. But the examiner was just stood on the street corner with a clipboard. 1973, this was. He was just stood on a street corner with a clipboard, just watching me go round and round.
And you fell off on your right side, so got away with it.
That's right. Yeah. Picked myself up, climbed back on where I went. So it's. But now I'm gladly, happily able to add this extra stuff in because I'm saving a ton of time through not instructing. When I first came across coaching, I thought, it takes a lot longer. It doesn't take a lot longer at all. It takes half the time, in fact. Once you get good at it, And you get good at it once you stop inputting yourself. So only input when you need to, and just set up some experiences for the learner to learn. But it's very difficult, that. And it was difficult for me to begin with Bobby Joe Turner, because it hurt my ego. She didn't need me. She didn't want me to be, telling her stuff. And you think, oh, but this is how I make my living. I'd got all this flashy stuff that I'd been working on for years and developing this sparkly instructing stuff. It just wasn't required. And I hadn't realized that it really didn't suit who I was. But I didn't know that until I stopped doing it and started doing something else.
I'm really pleased you used that comment then. You said about it, saving time and stuff, but then you added on once you get good at it. Because I think that's the common misconception I see, and not just with coaching, with anything. Someone tries it once and it doesn't work that first time because it's the first time we tried it.
Doing that again.
Yeah, I mean, look, no one ever has sex once. We have sex once and then we keep going. It's crap the first time, but we get better. You remember this isn't the best analogy, but I'm going with it. But we don't stop because it wasn't great the first time. But yet we'll apply that to something like coaching or trying a new social media strategy or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Is that something you see a lot? That, well, I tried it once or twice, it didn't work, so I gave up.
And I see people throwing quite a lot of effort at it, but they still give up. And I think it's because of the negative nature of human beings. We always find the negative rather than find the positive. Rather than think to themselves, that wasn't very good, what could I do different? We think, that wasn't very good, coaching shit. So it's somebody, who's that? I don't know, it doesn't matter who I was talking to. I was talking to somebody, well, how are you supposed to coach somebody through spiral roundabouts? I said, well, when would you do that? He said, well, when we're doing roundabouts, would that be the first roundabouts you would do? No. When would it be? We should be the last ones we did. I said, okay, what would you do before that? And I said, well, there you go. There's the goals that you want your learner to buy into. So why don't you offer those as opportunities? Well, what if they say they want to do spiral ones first? Well, what do you think you'll do? Well, if I'm coaching, I'm just going to let them do it. No, you don't. It's your car. If they prang your car, you're off the road, you pillock. Not earning any money. You say, well, I can't let you do that straight away. We need to build up to it. What are the skills we need to be able to? And I think the key thing is making sure that it's small, easily manageable steps. And then they succeed straight away. And because they're succeeding, they keep succeeding. It's like us with coaching. If we get success with it early on, we want more. But we try and just replace instruction with coaching overnight. Pulling the lever and the points change. No, that's not how it works. It takes time to develop, and it takes consistent effort. And there will be many failures, same as there was when you were learning to instruct. Think back, those of you who are brilliant instructors now, how shit were you at the start?
Your music's my ears tonight, Bob, with some of this stuff. Insane. But there will be many failures. And you know what, we did an episode on this recently, didn't we, about some of the things you struggled with, and we shared that. And that was one of my best episodes I've ever done on the premium stuff. And I even had a chat with Becky Seaton today, or joined on the ADI Walk back, and we spoke about it then. I'm like, it's so much more rewarding when you failed first. And I'm not advising people to go and fail a test, but like failing in the practice, when you achieve it, is so much more rewarding. I want to come back to kind of where people can start and maybe where you see people going wrong. But I want to touch on something else earlier about us having an agenda. Use the example of the goals for driver education matrix. And I'd not really thought of it that way before with the goals for driver education. Obviously, this is something I'm talking about a bit more now in the road safety stuff, but it's like, you're 100% right. If I turn up to a lesson with this in mind of today, we're going to cover this goals for driver education, then that's my agenda, not theirs. So how can we introduce that without...
Well, it's a tricky one, isn't it? It's a very worthy thing, but we have to be very careful that we're not leading with that. So, what do you want to do today? Well, I want to learn to be a safe driver. Said no 17-year-old ever. Okay, so let's have a little look at that. And then while we're learning it, we just play out some extra scenarios. How would this be in the dark? What would you do if? What would be a strategy if this happened? Simple stuff. Like somebody, we see it all the time, don't we? You're approaching a right-hand bend and the clown coming the other way. He either crosses the white line or gets a bit close. So, That was a bit naughty, wasn't it? Yeah. So what would you do if you'd been on your side of the road? Where would you have gone? Well, the natural reaction is to move to the left, where the safest place to put your car is where his should have been, because he can't be there, because if he could be there, that's where he'd be. So, and it's helping them play those things out. So we are still using it, and we are still getting to those higher cognitive skills and really thinking about these things. But that's not the framework that I would use. I would just introduce those things. And I like to train in a way that helps the learner come up with their own solutions by looking at a scenario, look at what can we see, what can we not see, what might we reasonably expect on this kind of road, this time of day, this time of year, in this kind of weather. And what if that doesn't pan out the way you want it to? What's your options? And I want them to be able to choose options. And this is particularly important with PDIs. And I think one of the biggest things that gives me success with PDIs, and I'm very successful with PDIs, they always come to me when they've had 2 tests and they're at the last chance saloon and I've got 2 or 3 days to do something about it. It's just when something happens, just ask yourself, well, what's my options here? What could I do? And then select one of them. Because what we do on the test is think, oh, I made a mistake back there. And we just keep thinking backwards. Too late for that. You can't do anything about that because that's already happened. So there's nothing you can do about that. But there's everything you can do about, well, what's ahead of us. So this is what I love about coaching. It's always a forward-thinking thing. Okay, if that happened again, what would you do? Next time you come to one of these, will you do it the same or will you do something different? If you're going to do it different, why? When they've done something, rather than say that was good, that was bad, that was right, that was wrong, that was better, that was worse, I would just say, what's the advantages of how we played it out? Any disadvantages? And the classic one is one I was dealing with the other day, the last lesson observation I did. I'm sat in the back of the car and the pupil's about to pull away without looking over their shoulder. Stop! From the back. Right, what's happening here? Oh, yeah, well, she always forgets her blind spot. Really? So why does she forget her blind spot? He said, well, I don't know, she's just forgetful. I said, you're normally forgetful with other stuff. I said, no. It's okay. Tell me about your blind spot. Oh, I keep forgetting, don't I? Yeah, you do. You do. So out of percentage terms here, between 0 and 100, how sure were you that you were safe? Oh, 95%. Is that enough, do you think? Well, yeah, normally. Okay. So could someone get in there and make contact with you? And could there be an accident? Well, there'll be a 1 in a million chance, she says to me. And I thought, I'm so pleased you used that phrase. Said, so between now and when you die, how many times do you think you're going to move away from the side of the road? So today might be the day. Oh, maybe today's the 1 in a million. So how can you be 100% sure? And often I'll get out of the car and I'll move around. Can you see me now? Can you see me now? Can you see me now? I'll move into the blind spot and say, can you see me now? No, look over your shoulder. Look where I am. What's behind me? There's a driveway, there's a junction, there's a path, there's a gate. So somebody can come from there. So if you want to be 100% safe, where do we need to look? And I'll talk to them then in the future going forward about what does 100% safe look like? Because we don't always need to check. If you're pulling away from the right-hand side of the road and you're up against the wall, you don't need to check there. So that gets away from this check 1, check 2, check 3, check. No, it's rubbish because they're learning to point their head in the direction. Is it safe to pull away here? Yeah. What are you basing that on? So I'm now drilling into what's inside their head because I want to use what's already in there to make connections to some new information because that's how people learn. Yes, we learn through being told what to do, but the learning is actually happening inside the brain. There's a new synapse being created, a new neural pathway as we make a link between this new information and stuff that we already hold. If we try and train without using the stuff that we already hold, it works clumsy, very clumsy. It takes twice as long, at least twice as long. So that's why I always talk about getting the learning out rather than putting the learning in. So we are playing out these scenarios and looking at, well, is that the best way to do it? Is that the safest way to do it? What's the advantages of what you've done? The disadvantages. And, the classic question that I was always told you should never answer. Will I fail my test for that? Well, I'll happily now go, yeah, you will. Do you know why? Yeah, the examiner won't like that. Do you know why he won't like it? Why would he mark it this way? What sort of mark do you think you would get from that? Well, if you were the examiner, what would you think? And I've had this where I've got the test criteria, and so here's the outcomes they're expecting. So if you do that, it's different to what he was expecting. What would you think if you were him? So I'll happily answer that question. Yes, you will. No, you won't. Why do you think that is? Learners, just like us, as an industry, are obsessed with mirror work. examiners aren't obsessed with mirror work at all. They never have been. Anyway, that was a very long-winded chunder, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. It was long-winded. It was interesting again, and do you know what? I'm going to have to add some onto my tracker saying new synapse or new neural pathway created onto my little tracker. I do. I did want to ask you though, why do you reckon more people come to you after 2 failed attempts rather than before their first attempt?
I don't know. I don't know. I suppose because I've got a bit of a name for doing so. I am very successful at it. And I strip it back. Okay, let's keep this as simple as we can. Let's look at what's required. Well, I've no names. Our mutual friend who I spoke to the other morning for a pep talk at 8:30 before she went for a test in the morning. She said, "Any last words of wisdom?" Yeah, just fix some shit. The stuff comes up, just fix it. Don't worry about it. Just fix stuff. Look for things that need fixing and fix them. And of course, apart from anything else, that gives us something to focus our mind on, which stops her cracking herself over the fact that it's a 3rd attempt. And that our livelihood's on the line, and the car's going to have to go back, etc., etc., etc. So I'm going to do it because I know you're full with guests for this season. I think it doesn't really fit with the. I'm going to record a video with let's look at the journey that you've taken. Let's look at what worked, what didn't work, why it worked, why did you continue with what you were doing when it clicked? Because we don't know any better, do we? It's only when somebody's been twice that the realization dawns on them that what I'm doing isn't going to get me what I want. Even though I've had this extra training, I've bought this extra stuff here, I've got this presenter, I've got all these resources, I've done all of that, and here we are, third go, and everything I've tried hasn't worked for me. Let's see what he's got to say.
I wonder if there's an element of as well, and this won't just apply to you, I suppose, but this person over here says I can achieve everything for $1,000 and I can do the part 1 by myself and I can do most of part 2 by myself. But then I look at Bob and what he's saying sounds a bit more difficult, and it sounds like I'm going to have to put a bit more work in and change what I do. Whereas over here, this thing just sounds nice and shiny. I wonder if there's a bit more of that. And then obviously they fail the first 2 because they try to do the thing that's been sold to them as easy. And then they go, oh, shit, maybe I do actually have to do the harder thing.
Yeah. In their defense, even some of the people who are selling the cheaper courses are saying you need to put the work in, but people don't. Wait, I don't know what's to blame for it, whether it's social media or whatever, but we seem to be generating a generation of PDIs that want it done on the cheap. And I think it's because we're attracting different people now. I think maybe we're now attracting more people who look at it and go, you can make really good money as a driving instructor. I think I'll have a go at that. Where in the past, I think we generated more people who'd been made redundant, who turned 30, 40, 50, who taught a kid to drive and thought, I'm ready for a change. I don't want to do what I've already done. Well, what am I good at? Well, I can drive and I can communicate. I'll be a driving instructor. So they were interested in the job in the first place. But, that type of mentality is probably going to make you look at it and go, I need to find out a bit about this. And I don't think people are doing the homework before they start. There's promises made in brochures and online by companies, and it's outrageous. We guarantee to give you your money back that you paid for training. Don't you worry. Just sign up with us, you get your money back. Yeah, but you've got to be with them 2 years. And if you don't pass, you've still got to give them the money. So and to get your money back from these so-called guarantees is very difficult. And, I'm always wary of, slagging people off with this, because if you spend your life looking for problems with other people, I think it impacts on you. But, it's buyer beware, but we're not. They'll get an app and somehow manage to get through part 1. They find a driving instructor who does them a couple of cheap lessons and gets them through part 2. And then they're now launching at part 3 without the subject knowledge, thinking that they're going to do it on the cheap. Well, if you want to do part 3 properly, and then cheap.
It's interesting. You mentioned social media again there, and I think immediately it sprung to my mind. You've got all these instructors doing TikTok videos now. Well, nothing against them in principle, just to clarify that. But I imagine to someone that isn't an instructor watching that, and I'm not on about the 17-year-olds, I'm on about someone considering becoming an instructor, watching that, what are they seeing? They're seeing a driving instructor sat there doing a mock test, making stupid faces at camera to try and get people to look at the video, and a student being ripped off and used for clickbait, and they're thinking they're doing something good. And I can imagine how that looks like a really easy job. So yeah, with what you're saying there, if anyone sees that, yeah, let's go do that, and then they see the part 1 with an app and part 2 with 2 lessons, and yeah, it's not great. But let's bring it back to coaching a little bit. Then I don't want to go too ranty down that road because it is a pet peeve of mine at the minute. But
yeah, me too.
What are some of the what's the biggest, if you like, misconception you see around coaching? What's the biggest problem, the biggest thing people get wrong when it comes to coaching?
Well, I think there's 2 areas. The lesser one, I think, is that people think it's just about letting the learner do whatever they want. They think that's coaching or that's client-centered. It's actually client-led, which is a very different thing. The client may not be aware of the risk that's involved in what they're about to do. So our job as the coach is to give using the GROW model, goal, reality, options, way forward. The reality would be well, hang on a second. We don't actually have the skills for that. So I'm afraid we can't do that today. However, let's put that as one of our long-term goals. I often use T-GROW, which is topic, and then goal, reality, options, way forward. But I think one of the biggest things is that people give up on it because they think the students don't want it, because they ask, what do you want to do today? I don't know. I just want you to tell me what to do. And they believe that that's what the case is, and it isn't. The I don't know is an escape mechanism for the stressful situation they currently find themselves in. And it's a technique they learn at school where the teacher asks them a question. If they say, I don't know, sir, or I don't know, miss, the teacher moves on and it's a lot less painful. So the instructor then just takes over, makes life easy for them. And then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because the instructor convinces themselves in that moment that that is actually what's required. And the change from being instructor to being coach is difficult, but it's well worth it. Now, I think it was Graham Hooper that said, I'm sure you'll confirm or deny. I think it was him that said ages ago that, if you're switching from being an instructor to being a coach, there'll be a point in the middle where you're a shit instructor and a shit coach because you've lost, the stuff that was pinning stuff down. So I think it is important that we look at that journey and try and make that simple. And I try as much as I can to say, well, try some of these things. And I want to make sure that the instructor gets good success with it early on and that it isn't painful. So at LDC, their workbook has a matrix at the front. So and it's something that I use all the time. It's all the lessons are in skill levels. And then the lessons are laid out. So at each skill level, there's several lessons you can choose. Okay, well, at this skill level, which one of them do you fancy doing? And you're offering them a choice. That's a very difficult thing to say, I don't know to. You say, well, okay. And then even if they did say, I don't know, just say, well, okay, most students would rather start with that one. Is that what you want to do? Yeah. Okay. How are we going to go about that? I don't know. Well, here's some options. So we're just inviting the buy-in. Once the learner realizes that you're not going to point and laugh and hurl abuse at them or do goodness knows what, like my instructor used to beat me up. Jesus. But I didn't complain because he was doing the same to all my mates. So I wasn't being singled out. So once the learner realizes that, well, actually, this is quite a pleasing scenario. It's actually quite nice to have somebody value what you say. Because think about it, especially 17-year-old males. Who listens to 17-year-old males? Well, nobody, because they're idiots. However, so the rest of the world's treating them like an idiot because their behavior sort of warrants it, if you like. Suddenly somebody said, well, what do you think? Well, I'd like to know what you think of that. You think that's a good idea? Oh, yeah. Okay. What you based on? Or what you having an honest adult conversation with them? And there's a few things that need to be in place. But I always want to work on getting easy stuff. And anybody sitting listening to this that wants to see whether their learners are capable of it, choose something very low risk, i.e. a maneuver. And that before you do it, just say to the learner, I want you to close your eyes. What we're going to do is, whatever it is, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to imagine yourself executing it to perfection. Let me know when you've done. So, all right, I've done it now. So, and was it spot on? It was. Okay. What we're going to do now is I'm going to keep everything safe. So it doesn't matter what you do, it can't go badly wrong. Execute what you imagined. And then when they're doing it, if it looks to you like it's not going to work, just say, stop here. Is this what you imagined? Because it won't be. And they'll say, no, what's different about it? Well, a bit wider. Okay, so what's your options here? If you're here on your own and you had to finish this, so what's your options? If they're no, great. If not, so you go back to start and begin, or you could put a bit more steering on, you can move back a little further and then turn, go a little bit slower, choose one of them. So you're helping them learn how to learn. And you're helping yourself learn how little input that you need. And that, they really are quite clever human beings and they can work this shit out. God, there were several tangents again, sorry.
It's all right. But I'm sure you agree with Graham Hooper with what he said. I know that there was a long period when I was a shit instructor and a shit coach. It was quite a long period. And even now, there's some days I'm a shit instructor and then other days I'm a shit coach. It happens. But I think that was kind of what I wanted to ask you as well, because we've spoke about this quite in depth on the premium before about how important is it that we're kind to ourselves? Because if we've never done coaching before, if we've never, or at least actively tried to develop that before, it's really easy to struggle. It's really easy to give up because it's not working. Yeah. How important is it to be kind to ourselves and accept that we're not always going to get it right first time? And it takes that period of practice.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because, you've got paying customers that you're doing it to. But, there's that feeling that if it's not really going well, you're kind of shortchanging them a bit. And it's, not really good value for money. So I would say, once you embark on a journey to become a coach, there'll be some lessons where at the end of it, you look at it and you think, oh, I'm very good at that. Just be honest with your learner and just say, look, I think I could have got more out of you last time. Let's add half an hour to next week's lesson. I won't charge for it. So, and that way you can sort of ease your conscience. But I think the key thing is to realize from the get-go that there will be things that you'll get wrong, just like there were when you were first an instructor. And think how long it's taken you to build up the tool bag of tricks that you've got now. It'll be the same with coaching, although there's a lot of your instructional stuff you'll be able to adapt. And it's about looking at it and thinking, allegedly Thomas Edison took 10,000 attempts to create the light bulb. But he didn't give up. He kept at it, and look where that ended up. So it's forgive yourself for the mistakes that you're gonna make. Have somebody that you're working with, ideally a coach, that just says, okay, what are we working on till I see you next time? What are you going to be working on? What will that look like when you've got it right? Okay, and then when you come back together, okay, so how did it go? Let's what worked, what didn't work. Were you surprised by anything in a good way or in a bad way? Okay, so we got this and we were expecting this. So this next week or whatever it happens to be is about turning what you got into what you wanted. So how are we going to do that? And then that person that you're working with might be able to help you with some options. It might be a buddy, it might be a coach. But it's definitely worth doing because the buzz you'll get from the job afterwards is ridiculous. And the key thing from it, if I was asked to describe coaching, I would say it's empowerment of the individual to unlock the learning process within that individual, and help them learn how to learn. And my stated aim always is to be able to get them to the point where they wouldn't need me. I mean, if you look on the videos on YouTube, you'll see I ask the learners quite a lot. So if you just had the car without me and you're allowed to drive around, could you get yourself ready for testing? Yeah. Okay. Except now I know I've done my job then. Whereas in the early stages, I would have been mortally wounded by that. Well, then what's my motivation? Oh.
I mean, we're talking about like the being kind to yourself there a little bit, and a couple of things came to me, especially when you mentioned Edison there, because this is the 178 or 179th episode of the podcast, something like that. And I've done over 300 in total podcasts, and I still got the intro wrong to the show. Now, chances are I doubt anyone noticed that when I did it. And I think that's something we need to be aware of on lessons as well.
Yeah.
99% of the time, student won't notice if we get something a bit wrong or we instruct rather than coaching, and we'll notice, and that's good because then we can learn from it. It's almost like learners when they they're more bothered about stalling than not checking the mirrors. But which is more dangerous? Not checking the mirrors. Why don't they care? Because no one else knows. No one knows they haven't checked the mirrors. But when they stall, every bugger knows. So do you think that plays a part as well? That they're not going to be that. They're not going to notice. They're not going to care as long as it's not stupid and dangerous.
I think it's one of the big things that holds us back as human beings. Fear of judgment. When we're small, anybody who's got a male child will know that you took them to the baths, took your eye off them for a second, and they ran and jumped in the deep end. Can't swim yet. They ran and jumped in the deep end. There's no fear there. When we get a little bit older and we see that people judge us, we feel shame of getting things wrong. It's an emotion that we have now, but we're not born with that. We're not born with shame. We're born able to be joyful, to be sad, to be anxious, to be frightened, to be interested. But shame is something we learn. So by being told that we're good for things, that we're bad for other things, and it's all around getting the child to behave. So we do, in the eyes of somebody that we see as an authority figure, which driving instructors can be, we fear getting it wrong. We fear the judgment that's going to come. It's one of the big things that stops people answering the question, what do you want to do today? If you look at some of the learners you see me with on the LDC YouTube, we go all videos now, they're coming along and starting to say, well, I'm thinking about this. And I think what I'd like to do is my connection is unstable. Oh, it's back again. No internet connection. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're back on. Your screen disappeared, but I could hear you fine.
All right. It just came up and said, your internet is unstable.
We've not lost you altogether. We just weren't able to see you for a second, which I won't say whether that's a good or a bad thing. It's interesting. Like you said about the judgment aspect, I can count on probably one hand the number of people that I feel completely unjudged by. And you're one of those people, you're someone that I would happily come to and, open up and feel like I can do that and without fear of ridicule or behind the scenes ridicule, I call it, where they might not ridicule you to your face, but they're going to talk about you behind it. So yeah, go on that. But I want to finish up with this one, and I've asked you this before, but I still think it's a good note to finish on. Where should you start? If you've never tried coaching, or maybe you've even tried it a bit, but it's not working at the minute, where would you recommend someone start?
If you want to see, I think, the power of the person sat next to you, change your questioning. So when something's going to drift, let's take, for example, the right corner cut. I watch instructors all the time. They draw it to the pupil's attention. You've cut the corner. Do you know what the dangers of that are? Blah, blah, blah. So what we need to do is put another little bit in between it. Try and find out why it happened. So you're looking at the symptom, which is the corner cut or the swan neck. What caused it? So if you say to the learner, what caused that, they'll go, I don't know. But if you ask a killer question, which is something along the lines of, how are you deciding when to turn? They've got to play that through in their mind and work out when it is. And in that action, they'll go, I stayed too early, didn't I? I don't know. Should we try that again? Let's go around the block and come back to the scene of the crime, and let's see what you do this time. So what are we going to do? And on the way around, I'll be saying, so what is it we're going to do different? I'm going to steer a bit later. Okay. Do you need me to remind you about that? No, I'll be all right. Okay, off you go. And then, how was that? Well, that's better. Okay, click save on that. They've already clicked save on it. That neural pathway has been created inside their head. So that kind of questioning, how are you deciding, covers a multitude of things. What speed to travel, where to position the car, how much room to leave between you and the parked cars, and the classic one on the roundabout, whether to go or not. And this is an area that we get badly wrong as an industry. And then we send people for tests and they do crazy things. They'll pull out when they shouldn't, or they'll stop when they shouldn't. And you say to the masters, what made you do that? Don't know. That's because it was another thing to remember. Instruction is things to remember. But if it's things to remember, it's also things that can be forgotten. Our thoughts and feelings and our belief system that we build for ourselves, you can't forget because it's hardwired inside your head. So they don't go wrong. So if we're talking about how are you deciding whether to go or not, or even if they've got it wrong, you say, okay, you thought it was best to stop there. Yeah. What did you base that on? or you thought it was okay to go. What were you basing that on? You think this is an okay speed of travel? Yeah. What are you basing that on? What are you taking into consideration before you come up with that speed of travel at? Help me understand. That's another great way to get in. Help me to understand. And another good one, whenever the pupil says something to you, say it back to them. We don't do that as an industry. We, I say, oh, well, I'm terrible at these right-hand turns. Terrible at these right-hand turns, you say? Yeah. What makes you say that? I say, so if I've got this right, what you're saying is X, Y, Z. And it gives them the chance to say, yeah, that's right. Nobody says, yeah, that's what I just said. They'll either say, yeah, that's right. And they'll go, no, that's not what I meant. What I meant was. So getting used to summarizing, recapping, it's a great tool. And it helps you to see exactly what's going on inside the head of the learner. So there's some simple stuff to try.
I like it. Good places to start there. But I want to come back to one comment. I don't want to run through all the comments. I want to come back to one particular question because I think it's a nice thing to throw at you. Whether you've got an answer or not, I don't know. It was from, I think it was from Guy McMillan. I got that wrong. But your new course, Bob, have you got a date for your new course yet? Or do you want to tell us anything about it?
I can do. I'm in the process of becoming an accredited centre, which is a lengthy process, and I'm at the end of it now. And the head of the awarding body that I'm using is on holiday until the 22nd of April. So I should be able to click the button to go. I've made the decision to not put detail on it because I want it to be all things for all people. So there'll be a course that runs, and basically it's two parts. The first bit is preparing for the coaching role, a lot of which is what we've been talking about today. Where are you now? Let's have a look at where you are, where you might start in becoming a coach. And then it's probably regular workshops, which are just Zooms to come together to say, well, okay, 10 people on the screen in front of me, and I've got a little note. You were working on this. How did that work? What about you? What about you? What about you? And a phrase that I heard, I can't remember what it was on. It was on some podcast, I think, somewhere. A guy was teaching people to do marketing, and he said, some of it's quite complicated, so I'm going to come and meet you where you are now and help you along the way. And I thought, what a great way of doing it. So that's going to be the first bit. And then the second bit, so once you've got all the knowledge and you know what it's all about, what it is, what it isn't, and you're able to, describe what it is and why is it different to coaching, to instructing, blah, blah, blah. Then we just need to watch you do it and say, well, is that coaching or is it not? So that will be, I'm working with Stefan at the minute, and doing some stuff with him because he'd done quite a bit of the BTEC stuff because, as we know, that they're not around anymore. So I'm helping. Stefan will be coach number one that's churned out the end of it, and we're already working together. He's doing loads of work. I'm hoping by the end of the month. So you'll be able to go through it. I've committed to it now, haven't I? So you'll be able to go through it, do all the knowledge unit and stuff, and it not be a qualification. It's just an experience that you've gone through. Or you can bolt on an internally verified. That's just, the people that are involved, the trainers and myself in it, saying, yep, that's good enough, and giving you the client-centered learning award in coaching. Or it'll be this very small firms enterprise development initiative, which is an awarding body, their certificate in coaching. It's at level 3, so it's not massively academic. And there'll be lots of different ways of submitting evidence. So there's a lot of it that says describe. Now, when people say that, they think, oh, I've got to write an essay. Not necessarily. We could have a recorded conversation. You could tell me what you think it is then. So we want to make it, funny enough, I was speaking to Carl Cooper Marlowe today about stuff. And, he has some particular needs that mean it's difficult for him to do certain things. So it was interesting to listen to him on the podcast. I think it was Josh's podcast he was on, talking about his journey through, because he has symptoms of ADHD, blah, blah, blah. So that's all been making me think, and I had a rethink over the last few weeks, to really think that I need to make it so that it doesn't matter who you are, you can do it. Well, that obviously makes more work for me. But so I've gone back to it, stripped all the detail out, and said, well, here's what you need to be able to do and to understand. And then everybody's going to have that journey different. to everybody else because they're different. Did that make sense?
Way back on episode 1, you told me you'd retired, and now you're doing all this.
I know.
177 episodes later. Do you know what you mentioned?
I am officially retired, yeah.
Yeah, I'll believe it. You mentioned Stefan. I'm going to give him a little shout. I love Stefan. Folks, anyone that isn't aware of Stefan, go and follow him on his socials. I think it's Swiss Drive. I recently released an episode of the driving 1 minute driving instructor tips podcast saying don't follow other driving instructors on social media, but go follow Stefan. He's an amazing bloke, wonderful to watch, wonderful to speak to, and he speaks better English than both me and you do, Bob. So
he does
brilliant. I'm going to leave it there because I want to go write a blog about how beginning coaching is like losing your virginity. So do you want to take a minute, Bob, just to remind people where they can find you?
Client-centeredlearning.co.uk. I also use pdiadi.com, but I've not done any courses recently because I've been, head down, backside up with this coaching thing. And amazingly, I've come to the end, sort of almost the end of that journey, and realised that I shouldn't have done all that work that I've done on it because that's the way I would do it, and that's only useful for me. Everybody's slightly different, so we need to have a bit more time, which time is money. So it means that the cost becomes a little more, but we need to speak to people one-to-one at the start. To say, right, where are we going to go? And we need to revisit that conversation regularly to say, well, is that still working for you? So, it's not just about having an assessor assess your work. It's about having your assessor put together plans with you. Okay, so what are we working on? How are we going to do that? How long till we come back together? And how will we know whether we've done it or not? So for some people, it'll take, 9 to 12 months. For some people, the likes of Stefan, who's already, a long way along the coach journey, not going to take anybody length of time at all. So I was trying to, so people can have these add-ons that sort of, take it to this full-blown, nationally accredited qualification, which is recognized outside of our industry.
I like it. Well, I want to take a moment just to thank you again, because you were the first person ever on the podcast. You were the first person to get their own series in the Instructor Podcast Premium, being Better with Bob. You were the first person to come to me and say, can I offer this discount? So anyone that signs up to Instructor Podcast Premium still gets a £10 discount off client-centered learning. So all these firsts for you, Bob. So yeah, big thank you for those. And big thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure, as always.
Always a pleasure, never a chore. And of course, your premium members will get access to a discount on the coaching course should they want it.
Oh, there we go. Let's keep mentioning that bit, because if you're watching today, they'll all be happy. I'm seeing thumbs up come up now. Look. All right. Cheers for your time.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Terry. Always a pleasure.
The Instructor Podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.